You read the title, you know what we're about to do. Week 7 predictions are inbound. But before we get into it, two pieces of housekeeping. First, we went 10-3 last week as a whole. A very impressive performance from the Thicc Inc. brand. That means one of two things. One, we are getting better at doing predictions, which I desperately hope we are. Or two, we are due for some regression to the mean and are about to have our worst week yet. Wait and find out if either of those things is accurate. Second, we never cover the Thursday night game. It wouldn't make sense when we upload the video. Having said that, it is a good thing we're not doing it because this may be the worst football game ever played. Pat Surtain out with an injury. Bo Nix still the Broncos starting quarterback. The Saints, thanks to Olave and Rashid Shaheed being hurt, are rolling out Mason Tipton, Cedric Wilson, and Bub Means as their 3 starting wide receivers. So we're not going to do a prediction, but Tristan, do you think 20 points are scored in total this game between both teams?
It probably are scored because there's 2 bad teams playing each other. Sometimes when you get 2 bad teams, points are still scored on the board because it's not a good defense playing a bad offense or vice versa.
I don't know. I think these teams both have good defenses. It's just the offenses are so pedantically mediocre at best. Being generous, they're mediocre. Maybe Rattler's got a little magic. Anyway, on to the actual game, starting things off with our third London game of the season. The Jaguars have been there for 2 weeks. They've got the home field advantage, and they are hosting the New England Patriots and Drake May. And the sky's falling down in Jacksonville, much like London Bridge. The receivers, terrible, can't catch a ball if it hits him in the chest. Peterson, soon to be out of a job. The defense, despite the high-end talent in the front 7, just looks so uninspiring. And Trevor Lawrence may not be that guy. It's hard to get a good read with what's around him. Having said that, somehow the Patriots are worse. With the exception of Drake May, that team's offense is pathetic. They are going to turn the ball over. They are going to let May get sacked, strip sacked. They're not going to have much of a running game, even if Ramondre Stevenson comes back and is fully healthy. It's just an uninspiring unit all around. Unless Demario Douglas cranks out another 50-yard reception, they're not getting on the board a lot. I've got the Jaguars winning this game. The Patriots are one of the worst teams in football, and they've got a home field or a road game disadvantage, which the Jaguars simply do not. It's going to be an ugly one. I'm not waking up at 9:30 to watch this. I'm sure my co-host feels the same.
And I actually think for a lot of reasons, this is one of the more interesting games this week for all of the wrong reasons. The Patriots, they had Drake May make his debut last week, had a very strong performance in my opinion, but the rest of the team is not good. On the other side of the field, you have a Jaguars team that had a lot of expectations heading into the season. They gave Trevor Lawrence a massive contract, supported him with talent on the offensive side of the ball. They hoped the defense would continue to turn the corner, and they are so bad. They have their current employed head coach saying that they need a culture change, which when you hear that, you usually think that coaches are getting fired. And if it wasn't for the game being played in London, I think Doug Peterson probably would have been fired already.
For back-to-back weeks in London, we got to talk about the abnormality of this circumstance. If they played last week in Jacksonville, Peterson would be out of a job and the interim would have been stuck on a plane flying abroad. This is a unique circumstance.
And it's also a unique circumstance because if they win this game, do they still fire Peterson or do they wait another 1 to 2 weeks? I think that is another potential interesting outcome when we look back on it. But just determining a winner, who I think is going to win, the Jaguars have the better receivers. They have the better tight end. Defense, the Patriots, maybe you just view that better because of historical precedents, but they haven't been good this season. The Jaguars' defense has been worse. It's going to be a messy game, but I think the Jaguars ultimately do win.
Shout out to George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt, the historical presidents. This is not going to be a good game. I say it's interesting because of all the dysfunctionality is one way of looking at it. I will not be waking up before noon on Sunday. It's just how we do things around here on Thicc Inc.
I wake up at 6 every morning.
You wake up at 6 every morning thinking, man, I got to drop a double Y X banana flag football seam go route to get my 12-year-olds fired up, son. It just means more over there at PSP. Speaking of meaning more, talk about the Falcons.
Seahawks, Falcons. Based on what we have seen from both of these teams so far, it is easy to predict the Falcons to win. The Seahawks, over the last 3 weeks, have been incredibly unimpressive. Their offense has put together some pretty solid performances, but their defense has continuously gotten shelled. Now, Byron Murphy, hopefully he's able to play for the Seahawks this week, improve that front 7, improve their ability to get to Kirk Cousins, and stop the Falcons' very strong run game, but I don't think that is going to be enough. The game is in Atlanta. To speak to how bad the Seahawks run defense has been, they gave up 175 to the Giants, another 228 to the 49ers. And when you're playing a Falcons team that can run the ball, Kirk Cousins has shown he can throw the ball down the field with a game passing for over 500 yards this year. The Falcons have enough weapons. The only advantage the Seahawks truly have is at the receiver position, but I think the Falcons will win.
The problem you're going to run into playing the Falcons, unless you are really a top-of-the-line passing attack, you are not moving the ball well through the air, and I don't think the Seahawks are that. They've got an elite secondary. They can shut down all but the very best receivers, and DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jason, however you feel about them, they're not those guys. Turns the Seahawks offense into a one-dimensional force. And Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet are good running backs. The right side of that offensive line is putrid, but the left side's not too bad with Charles Cross. And I could see them moving the ball up and down the field on the ground. The problem is, the Falcons' offense is two-dimensional. They can run and pass. Kirk Cousins can do his thing, particularly against weaker opponents like the Seahawks secondary. Bijan Robinson, phenomenal running back. Tyler Algier went for 109, 110 yards last week. Great performance from him in the win. The Falcons are just too good. They've got too much firepower, and even with the weakness of their defense, their front seven, their D-line, it's not going to matter. A high-scoring affair, potentially, but one the Falcons are going to win. Moving things on over, the Bills are hosting the Tennessee Titans. And this is what we call a trap game for the Buffalo Bills. Good defense. Team with a bad reputation coming into town. And outside of a brief altercation with the ball boy, Will Levis did not play that bad last week against the Colts. A lot of areas to improve.
What game did you watch?
A lot of areas to improve. But outside of blowing up some 50-year-old man's ACL, he did not have a terrible on-the-field moment. Having said that, I can't spin this any other way. Buffalo is just so much better than this team in every aspect of football. This is a 9.5-point line, which should tell you all you really need to know about what the experts are saying. I see no path to victory for the Titans, particularly with the bolstered offense Buffalo now has thanks to Amari Cooper. Maybe if he doesn't play, if he gets into like a drunken snowboarding accident and takes out the rest of the Bills' offensive personnel, leaves Josh Allen all by himself playing 1-on-11, then the Titans might win, but it's not happening.
Not much needs to be said about this game. I have said from the beginning of the season that the Titans were going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, and that has come to fruition over 6 weeks. It really just puts into perspective how much Mike Vrabel was getting out of the Titans last year when they were bad and objectively probably had a worse roster. Will Levis against a bad defense last week. You mentioned he didn't play that bad.
By the way, you don't get to play both sides by talking about, oh, they're going to be devastated with the loss of Derrick Henry. Then when you want to trash them, say, oh, now they got a better roster, actually. Shut up.
Well, when it comes to the passing attack, they should be better than they were last year. I mean, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine was their only receiving threat.
Well, there's this guy named DeAndre Hopkins who was on the team last year.
If we're going to belabor that point and you want me not to talk about the rest of the game or get on to the rest of the games, the whole point I was making with Derrick Henry leaving and it being worse for the Titans was because Will Levis was so bad and they wouldn't be able to take advantage of the other talent they signed. But we don't need to get on to why I thought the Titans were going to be atrocious at the beginning of the season. He was bad last week. He's playing a Bills team that is going to be in the playoffs. Josh Allen just got Amari Cooper into the building. You know they're going to move the ball down the field. And it is really unfortunate how bad this Titans offense has been because they are leading the NFL in defensive yards allowed per game.
Actually, I think they're second, but they're very near the top of the league.
They're phenomenal. Leading the NFL.
57 yards a game. Just elite stuff from the defense. You really have a hard time seeing how they lose games, yet they find a way. They always seem to find a way. Speaking of losing games,
Bengals headed to Cleveland to take on the Browns, and this is just going to be a bad game. The Browns seemingly get worse every single week. The only reason last week was close is because Myles Garrett jumped over, blocked a kick, and returned it for a touchdown. That's the only reason they had a hope last week. And against a Bengals team who beat the Giants last week, their offense has the ability to put up 50 points with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Chase Brown out of the backfield, now establishing himself as the number one guy. You are admitting defeat when you traded away Amari Cooper, and I would be shocked if this team wins more than 2 games this year.
More than 2 games. Who is the one game left in their schedule they win? What is the one?
Maybe they sneak one out against their next game against the Steelers and Russell Wilson-led offense.
I'm going to push back on one thing you said. Myles Garrett did not score that touchdown. Rodney McLeod scored that touchdown. And that's important.
I said he blocked
That's
it.
important. You said he ran it back in for a touchdown. That's important because Rodney is the only player on the Browns roster this year with a touchdown now that Amari Cooper is gone. Tells you all you need to know. I try to spin the Titans a little bit, make it look decent for Will Levis. I'm not going to bother on this one. The only path to victory this team has is if Myles Garrett just goes berserk. A Khalil Mack-esque 6-sack performance would be required to stop the Bengals offense. I don't even think he can do that with that. It's just a lost cause. The Bengals are winning this one. Not too much to say. Texans-Packers. Lambeau is a hard place to play, particularly if you do not have the right cleats. The Packers coming off a massive win over the Cardinals. Very close to being 3-0 at home this year. Houston's rolling into the game banged up. Nico Collins not playing. Azeez Al-Shahir hurt. Jimmy Ward hurt. Henry To'oTo'o injured but playing. Laramie Tunsil and Joe Mixon also banged up. Some of those guys will play, some of them won't, but they're limping into this one. The Packers are better off health-wise. They've got the home field advantage. They've got a deeper receiving room, and their defense is probably the area they are most susceptible. Their front seven is not going to be able to keep Joe Mixon in check if he plays, but I don't think the Texans are able to do quite enough offensively to keep up with what the Packers are going to do. We have seen the Texans defense thrive when facing bad quarterbacks like Drake May, like Caleb Williams early, but when they play an elite quarterback, someone who can really move the ball around through the air, they get absolutely shelled. And I think Jordan Love can do that to this team. With how many weapons he's got available to him, with the depth of the receiving room, certainly that is in the cards. I've got the Packers winning this one at home, taking a little bit of wind out of the Texans' sails, and moving them to 4-2.
There's certainly a lot more pressure on the Packers to win this game because they are in the best division in the NFL, certainly the best division in their conference, and the Texans, they're not exactly in a competitive conference, although obviously they would like to win. And I think heading into this game, it feels like a lot of people are favoring the Packers to win this one because of what you mentioned. The Texans are dealing with some injuries. Nico Collins, we don't exactly know when he's going to be back. But last week, even though it was against a Patriots team, since Joe Mixon has been back, he may be the most important part to that offense, not named C.J. Stroud. When they have an elite running back in that backfield, they just reach new levels in the pass game, off the play action. Tank Dell was productive in place of Nico Collins. Stephon Diggs has stepped up and returned to some semblance of his Buffalo form. And even though the game is in Lambeau, I am trusting DeMeco Ryans and their defense to force Jordan Love to make mistakes. Given that, I have the Texans in a mini upset beating the Packers.
Your faith is misplaced.
By the way, the Packers also have not beaten a team above 500 this season.
Good for them. Neither of the Lions, but we're still going to talk about how great they look in a few minutes.
So the Dolphins are heading to Indianapolis. They're heading to a cold weather city. I know the game is played in a dome.
Why did you feel the need to bring that up? Also,
because they are going to step off
in October.
They are going to step off of the plane, feel the cold wind, and they are going to be shell-shocked, especially without having Tua throwing passes.
Feels like a useless little fun fact. Did you know Anthony Richardson's mother's actually younger than Joe Flacco? What does that add to this?
The Colts are bad. The Dolphins are really bad without Tua. Even if Devon Achane is healthy off of that concussion, he hasn't been all that great or even close to great without Tua on the field operating that offense. Anthony Richardson has not been overly productive in his second year, really kind of true rookie season in the NFL. I think the Colts will win, but it is going to kind of a coin flip game for me, and it's going to be messy, but I'm picking the Colts just because of the home field advantage.
It's going to be messy in that nasty cold weather dome they've got there.
I don't mean messy literally when it comes to weather. I just mean messy product on the field.
It's going to be a soccer game. We're going to get Messi and Ronaldo in there for this. The only way the Colts lose this game is if Anthony Richardson turns the ball over 2 to 3 times. The Dolphins' offense is non-existent outside of bombs to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle or getting the ball in their opponent's red zone. Richardson is capable of doing that, but he is playing for his job because if the Colts lose this game or he underperforms, I am very confident they will move forward with Joe Flacco for the remainder of the season. So, having a modicum of faith in Richardson, I'm going to pick the Colts to win this one, but this one kind of going to be a stinker. On to what is the game of the week, what could have been the game of the year if not for a tragic injury to Michigan man Aiden Hutchinson. We've got the Minnesota Vikings 5-0 taking on the Detroit Lions 4-1. And the Lions are coming off a massive victory over the Cowboys. Dominated them in every aspect of the game. When you can check your backup tackle in at a wide receiver position and have a pass thrown to him, you know you are cooking your opposition. This team's offense has looked great the past few weeks. Dominant through the air, dominant on the ground, and will give Brian Flores' defense the biggest challenge he has faced all year. Maybe the biggest challenge he will face all year, depending on who he sees in the playoffs. They're a balanced running attack. They've got a great passing game. The Vikings corners are going to be stuck man-to-man a lot more often than they would like to be because of the resources Minnesota has to commit to the box. Having said that, Brian Flores off a bye week is a scary, scary man. If anyone can crack that Lions O-line, it's him. On the other side of the ball, this one's going to come down to Sam Darnold. Detroit's got a great run defense. You think that's going to be diminished because Hutchinson isn't playing, but they're still good. They're still not going to allow 150 yards on the ground, which means Minnesota has to throw the ball. Sam has to stand up to blitzes, to the pass rush, and deliver to Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson in a limited role now that he's back from injury. Naylor, Oliver, he has got to find his guys. I think he can. I think Detroit's secondary is clearly their weakness, and the Vikings' strength is their receiving room. I think Minnesota wins this one at home. They move to 6-0 and become clearly the best resume team in the NFL in 2024.
This game is going to be a massive test for Sam Darnold because I think a big storyline that hasn't been super talked about is Aaron Jones' health heading into this game. He's coming off of a hamstring injury. It's not quite certain if he's going to play. And then you have Ty Chandler backing him up, which in my opinion is a massive drop-off. So will the Vikings have a strong run game that is able to support Sam Darnold? I don't feel all confident in that happening in this matchup against a Lions team that has been building momentum over the course of the season. At the beginning of the year, it was a little disappointing what we've seen from their offense, but they've gotten better every single week. Jamison Williams has emerged as a very solid second wide receiver option to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Their run game, of course, has been dominant. We knew that was going to happen, and because of the fact that I'm not overly confident in Aaron Jones's ability to be healthy in this game and for the Vikings to run the ball at a high level, I am going to pick the Lions to win, and I think this is the game the Vikings drop to no longer be undefeated.
A hater through and through. I think it's worth noting that the Vikings were never really going to do much up the middle of this game. The interior of their O-line is not good, and they'd be running a DJ Reader, so not a recipe for success. They're going to have to do off-tackle stuff, maybe hit that guard tackle gap a lot if they want anything going. I don't think the run game was ever going to be a massive part of this game based off who Detroit is. But I could definitely see it being non-existent, hurting Minnesota. I'm still rocking with the Vikings, though.
You're rocking with them every week of the season.
Exactly, particularly since they're coming off a bye week. Kevin O'Connell's got to use his nice big brain to design all these different offensive schemes. They traded for Cam Akers, who thought he was out of Minnesota when he signed with the Texans in free agency. Not so fast, pal. I hope you like wearing purple. You're not wearing 31 anymore, though. Anyway, take us on to your favorite team, the team you are repping right now.
I know I said very recently that the Giants were going to beat the Eagles because the Giants, while they've looked not good, they haven't looked as bad as we maybe would have thought on the offensive side of the ball, but Andrew Thomas is hurt. He is done for the year. The Eagles' defensive line did not look, or pass rush did not look as productive as we would hope at the beginning of the season. They've kind of gotten a little bit better each week, not quite where we want them to be, but because of that Andrew Thomas injury, this is a great opportunity for them to build some momentum, and the overall feel of the game, I think, is going to be very similar to the Bengals and Giants game, because the Eagles rely on that big play. The Giants have a phenomenal front seven. We saw Azeez Ojulari show up in a massive way last week, stepping in for Kayvon Thibodeau, so I think the Eagles will win, but I think it'll be another somewhat disappointing performance from their offense, where the Eagles fans are left wanting more.
You gotta leave with something. You can't just say, oh yeah, the Eagles are winning. You've got to throw a little bit of salt in their eye. You know how this game's going to go. I know how this game's going to go. Saquon Barkley doesn't know how this game's going to go because he said he doesn't think he's going to be booed by Giants fans. Little does he know, if the Patriots fans are willing to boo Tom Brady when he signs out of conference to a team in Florida, the Giants fans are booing Saquon because he signed with the Eagles. He needs to accept that. And with that booing, with that animosity they build up in him, the lack of thankfulness they have, he is going to run for 150 yards, cook this defense, destroy their weak front seven, their weak secondary, because every secondary and front seven is weak in the face of the Eagles' offensive line and Saquon Barkley. The passing attack should look better. Don't have much faith in the Giants' cornerbacks. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, another week getting back to 100% health, and I'd be shocked if this game is close. I am a little bit disappointed you are not a man of conviction and will not blindly throw another loss onto your predictions record by picking the Giants to win. I don't know why you're rocking with them on the hat if you were not going to stand by your team, but it's just the way of the world, man. I have low expectations for you. They just got a little lower.
When you lose the second best player on your offense, that is on your offensive line.
Hold on, are you saying Malik Neighbors is better than Andrew Thomas?
Yes.
All right, man. We are overrating that man a bit much. We got around a top 10 offensive tackle, and you got Malik Neighbors. No comment. Easily pleased.
Top 5 receiver.
Easily pleased. Raiders going to the Rams, and on paper, this should be a competitive game. Then you look at it a little bit more. Off a bye week, Sean McVay, a little bit spicy, got to outcoach the hell out of Antonio Pierce in Las Vegas where the sky appears to be falling. Not much going on over there. The Rams line finally starting to get healthy. Some of those suspensions finally starting to wear off. They're finally using their best running back and Blake Corum on the ground effectively. We're going to see his touches increase week to week now that he's been inserted in the offense. Now, credit to Brock Bowers, credit to Alexander Madison. I think they'll be able to do a little something against this weak Rams defense, but I just don't think it'll be enough. Whatever quarterback Vegas rolls out there, he is an area of weakness. He will not be able to effectively get the ball into his playmakers' hands. He's not that guy. Cooper Kupp's back. Stafford's kind of healthy. I think the Rams just barbecue this Raiders defense, and the Raiders are forced to try and keep up with them, which never goes well with Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Give me a Rams win here.
Cooper Kupp may actually play this week. That has potential to happen, but the Rams are going to win regardless. I was a little bit too high on the Raiders heading into the season. Way higher on Zamir White and their rushing attack than I should have been, but their defense now is injured. They traded away the best player on their offense to the New York Jets. They have controversy at quarterback. And on the Rams side of the ball, you mentioned Sean McVay off a bye. Kyron Williams has been very productive this year, even if Blake Corum hasn't been getting as much touches as either one of us feel he should be getting. So I think the Rams win very easily.
Ron Riverside getting more carries than Blake Corum the first 4 weeks of the season might be a strong indicator as why they started off as poorly as they did.
We're in DC for this one. Commanders versus the Panthers, and there's not much to say. I just watched Jaden Daniels go toe-to-toe with one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL, almost won that game, and they're playing the Panthers, who Andy Dalton, since he took over the starting job for Bryce Young, has kind of looked worse every single week. Chuba Hubbard maybe has a small chance at making this game competitive if they hand him the ball 35 times, but I just don't see that happening. The Commanders are going to win this game very easily, potentially, probably the biggest lock of the week in my opinion.
I don't know, man. I don't know about putting Lamar Jackson in that top 3 quarterback conversation. We've got such guys like Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and Joe Burrow cooking this year. I don't know. I might put him at 4. But yeah, Commanders are not losing this one. Jaden Daniels seems a little bit upset in practice, a little bit fired up. The only hope the Panthers have to win is if their college-level talent on defense somehow brilliantly adapts to Cliff Kingsbury's college offensive scheme, and that, for whatever reason, cancels itself out. But yeah, Washington's winning this one. Not much more needs to be said. Another game of the week contender, Super Bowl rematch. We have got the 49ers hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. And banged up knees, injured receivers, underachieving, whatever. Andy Reid's 21-4 off a bye week. He is going to come with some heat against the 49ers. All the good coaches this week seem to have been coming off byes, which gives them a massive advantage, I'm starting to notice, in our opinion. Didn't even think of that when I'm writing these. If this 49ers team cannot get the ball in the red zone, is forced to rely on injured and inconsistent kicking, they're going to lose badly. If they can have some resurgence in that offensive line, in that blocking tight end group, get some movement, some traction down near the goal line, they're going to get embarrassed. They won't be blown out because the Chiefs offense, as we have seen it, is incapable of blowing anybody out. But it's going to be rough. I choose to believe that Kyle Shanahan has done something, some small piece of innovation, of change to get them in the red zone. This is not a bad 49ers team, among the best offensive and defensively in football. They just can't finish. I think they finish this week. I think they find a way to get 23-24 rough, tough, grindy points against this Chiefs defense, and I think that winds up being enough. On principle, I don't pick for the Kansas City Chiefs. I hate them. I hate picking against Andy Reid off a bye. It's a tough spot for me. I'm kind of trying to justify the 49ers winning here to myself. I think it might happen. They're favored by Vegas to win this game, although it's a 1-point pick 'em, so do with that what you will. I will, since we need some differentiation in here, I'm going to say the 49ers win.
You don't need differentiation.
We need differentiation.
I don't want to hear the excuses when the Chiefs blow the 49ers off the field.
Yeah, they're going to blow them off the field. They're going to score 12.
A crisp 4-point margin of victory.
A crisp 12-0 win where there was a questionable call at the end of the game.
And you spoke to the 49ers red zone offense not being great. Neither of these teams have had good red zone offenses this season. I think the Chiefs is actually currently ranked lower than the 49ers after last week. The major difference is just the Chiefs have a good red zone defense, and their defense overall has been significantly better than the 49ers defense. So that is the story of this game. And the Chiefs last week, with all the injuries they've had, showed that they can insert a Juju Smith-Schuster who does some things very well even later in his career, and he had a career game. Kareem Hunt went in, had a very good game at running back, looked like early career Kareem Hunt. So they've shown the ability to insert new players to them for this season, older players, into their offense and still have them be productive.
Man, Juju's 27.
Yeah, but he's well past his prime.
He's well traveled.
Had some injuries, nowhere near what we thought he was going to be when he had 1,400 yards.
It's the Antonio Brown
effect.
Yeah. Team MVP Juju Smith-Schuster, ladies and gentlemen.
And Travis Kelce feels like he's kind of been getting in better football shape and been productive every single week this regular season. So with what the Chiefs have looked like compared to what the 49ers have looked like as a totality, and you factor in Andy Reid being 21-4 off of a bye, this is a game the Chiefs win even if they're traveling to San Francisco to get the job done.
I will say, pushing back on one other thing besides the old age and bad knees of Juju Smith-Schuster, like he is uncomfortably close to the same age as us, man. Let's not start calling him old just yet, but
we're also not professional athletes.
Speak for yourself, son. Kareem Hunt was running against the Saints front seven the last time he played. It's kind of easy to have a good rushing performance against that team. That team's got a terrible run defense, but it's going to be a competitive game, one way or the other. I hope we get a questionable call somewhere towards the end of that game. I love the Twitter controversy from that. A dialogue will be started.
Even though the Chiefs have the most penalty yards since Patrick
Wow,
Mahomes.
It's almost like a vast majority of those penalty yards are either false starts, delay of games, or procedural movements. Like that argument doesn't really hold up when you look at it for more than 5 seconds. Just because Jawan Taylor commits a false start penalty every other snap doesn't mean the Chiefs are at a disadvantage with the refs.
Doesn't mean that they're at an advantage with the refs.
We
don't need to get into a ref conversation. We could get into that if it happens in the reaction.
You can kiss the shield next week. Anyway, Sunday Night Football.
Jets, Steelers. I wish that the Jets were playing a team that I knew they were going to lose to after acquiring Davante Adams, but they're playing a bad team with Russell Wilson at quarterback. The Steelers, they don't really have a run game. They don't really have a passing game. Their offensive line is not good. Sure, they have a great defense, but with Davante Adams joining the Jets offense, they're going to be able to put up at least 17 points, which is enough to beat the Steelers these days.
I'm going for 21 points, personally. Slightly more than they had against Buffalo. Better defense, but now better weapons as well. But I kind of feel the same way. This is not a strong Steelers team coming off a heartbreaking loss to the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. I think we see that again. I think Rodgers gets the ball late in his hands, trailing, and is able to pick his way down the field with something out of the backfield to Breece Hall, but primarily with shots to Davante Adams. I wouldn't be shocked if Garrett Wilson got 5 targets or less this game. I feel like he is going to be passed over in favor of the guy Rodgers already has chemistry with and who doesn't yell at him on the sidelines, because you cannot challenge the authority of Aaron Rodgers, ladies and gentlemen. Give me the Jets winning this one, and on to the first of 2 Monday night games. And here's where things get fun. Did you know that when Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, and Antoine Winfield play, the Buccaneers statistically have the best running defense in football? Were you aware of that?
I was not aware of that.
Were you aware that when Baker Mayfield faces secondaries that do not contain Patrick Surtain this year, he is statistically having the best passing season of the past 20 years at the quarterback position? Were you aware of that?
That doesn't shock me.
And were you aware that statistically no team in the past 3 years has beaten the Buccaneers on Monday Night Football?
Is the punchline to this, you're still picking the Ravens to win?
The punchline of that one is I just made it up on the spot because I didn't feel like looking back. But I'm not picking the Ravens to win. I think the Buccaneers match up great with this team. We have seen this Ravens secondary get toasted by high-powered passing attacks time and time again this year. And I ask you, Tristan, what do the Buccaneers have if not a high-powered passing attack? Bucky White, whatever. Rashad White, whatever. They are slinging that sucker around. Regardless of health, regardless of how old everyone is, that ball is going to be flying from Baker Mayfield's hands. And they're going to score points. What I think happens is the classic blueprint we see with the Ravens. The Buccaneers go out there, 2 quick touchdowns, 2 quick scores. The Ravens struggle early, first 2 drives, maybe result in a field goal. Suddenly, they're trailing big. They have to pass the ball. They have to phase Derrick Henry out of this game. And when that happens, the Ravens lose those games. The Buccaneers just keep pulling further and further ahead with their passing attack as the Ravens sputter and struggle and try and get Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely the ball at a rate which is somewhat successful. It just isn't enough to keep up with Tampa Bay. I've got the Buccaneers pulling off the upset at home.
Well, I wouldn't really agree with that Derrick Henry premise, considering how the Bengals and Ravens game went, where he was not really productive the entirety of the game, and Lamar Jackson kept them in the game by throwing the ball. And both these offenses, he talked a lot about how the Buccaneers have been putting up a lot of points this season. They've put up 30 or more points 4 times. The Ravens are 2 points away from having that also be a statistical fact for them. So both of these offenses are great, and they move the ball at a high level. I think the winner of this game will be firmly leading the MVP discussion. If Baker Mayfield is able to take down the Ravens, get the Buccaneers to 5-2, have another strong performance where he is at the top of the NFL in all of the statistical passing categories, we are going to see him in the top 3 for MVP voting. The same goes for Lamar Jackson. If he's able to have another strong performance against a good NFC team, the offense puts up 30-plus points again, and he continues to be on that pace to have over 4,000 passing yards, 1,000 rushing yards, he will be in the center of MVP discussions. So I think this is going to be a high-scoring game from every stretch of the imagination, and I ultimately think the Ravens are going to win because they have a very good run defense. Baker Mayfield's going to have to throw the ball 50 times if they want to win, and I don't think he's going to be able to keep up with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens' offensive production.
You clearly don't know how this works, Tristan. Patrick Mahomes is going to throw for 212 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. And he is still going to get to be the league leader in MVP voting through the first 7 weeks, as he is right now. Regardless of their performances, Mahomes will be atop of the MVP voting this year. Come now, we must embrace the fact that the voters simply love themselves some Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, not voting, betting odds, but...
Yeah, potato, potato. Anyway, take us to our ESPN Plus game of the week.
The Chargers, they're the most boring good team in the NFL. Their offense doesn't have a lot going on. Their defense has been very solid this year. And the Cardinals, you don't know which version is going to show up every week. Last week, we got bad Kyler Murray. The week prior, we got good Kyler Murray. And I think because of how good the Chargers defense has been and how good enough their offense has been against a not very talented Cardinals defense, Marvin Harrison Jr. also probably not playing after suffering a concussion last week. I think the Chargers win this one. Well, they're expected to win, and I think they will.
Well, those Ohio State wide receivers don't have much going up on in their brain anyway, so they're probably more likely to be able to bounce back from a concussion than your average NFL player, certainly more likely than the average Michigan football player. But if you would like my full predictions on this video, you'll have to send me $10 a month. Just forward it to espnplus@gmail.com. The Chargers are winning this game.
What?
Jim Harbaugh, phenomenal coach, and we'll see you folks next week.
That has been this week's podcast. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, help us get closer to 14,000 subscribers. Maybe we'll one day get to 20,000 subscribers. If you want to help out our channel, use code Thicc on Underdog. You get bonus cash up to $1,000, and we will see you in the next one.